the fact that the level of income has gone so low, people still need to feed.
Yes, people have to feed, but they have to feed and they must visit market.
The general belief is that one has to graduate first before going to serve.
The much-awaited anti-bubble bust will, of course, commence today. Of course, I'm talking about Aviation, where it comes up the first segment every Monday morning. And to look at this is your regular, a man who has touched so many lands when it comes to the issue of aviation, programs and events. He is also a licensed estate surveyor and valuer, Mr. Godwin Ike. Your number one aviation freak. Very good morning to you.
Good morning, Joe.
You're welcome.
How was your weekend?
Well, beautiful. And yours?
Oh, wonderful always. Oh, thank God.
And the bubble burst.
Yes, on the bubble burst.
Why did the bubble burst?
Joe, the Dana air crash was one crash that broke my heart. Broke my heart so badly because that crash had no business. That air crash had no business happening. Here we are. We are learning to live with the pain of very lovely, beautiful people lost in that unnecessary crash. And the whole essence of what we're doing here, Joe, is to remind us where we went wrong and ensure that those who are operating today, are doing the right things. I always say airplanes are very faithful machines. They fall out of the skies because human operators can be unfaithful and dishonest. And that's why they fall off the skies. Otherwise, they're so well built that if human operators were to match the faithfulness of airplanes, there won't be virtually any crash. You find one in the world, maybe once in a long time, when there is a real unfortunate technical failure. But not this kind of reckless thing that you see around, especially. Now, the bubble burst simply means that 2 years before the crash.
That was 2010?
2010. I was to fly that airline to Lagos precisely on the 14th of July, 2010. And it was supposed to be a 3 p.m. flight. But only for us to realize that we were loaded in an unserviceable plane, a plane that was not airworthy, and I caught them. I don't want to preempt.
How do you describe a plane that is not an airworthy?
Well, first of all, was that the pilot could not start his engines from the cockpit. There was a disconnect between the cockpit and those engines, and an indication that his auxiliary power unit, was faulty, and they went on with it that way for so long. As a matter of fact, when I caused a commotion in the airplane, when I noticed, and of course the pilot made the mistake of his life, openly admitting that he couldn't connect to the engines, I raised an alarm and I asked passengers to disembark, and we did. The rest of the story we'll see in the clips.
In aviation, what is the usual practice? I mean, before passengers embark, do you have the plane, started, or you started before?
No.
You started when passengers embark.
Usually, the auxiliary power unit will be on because those supply you with the power required to keep the air conditioning system working without running your main engines that drive the airplane. All right. Those APUs, must be working and supplying. You will see it in the clips as we read them. Definitely that unit had been bad because the very next day, on the 15th of July 2010, when I returned, remember I told you that I had a flight aborted, the previous night. And the very next day when I came into the airport, one of the officials of Dana saw me and walked up to me and said, "Oga, thank you, sir, for what you did last night. We've been telling our bosses about this thing, and one day an experienced individual will notice it." An indication that that problem had been there and ignored. And Joe, it went on for 2 more years before that very unfortunate crash took place. Let's get on with this business because time is usually not our friend. Can we have clip 1? Let's run through quickly. Clip 1 is simply, excuse me, showing our viewers the title of the day. This is exactly the title of a book that will be launched first quarter of next year, by the way, Joe, where I'm just giving a snippet. The book is so graphic. All the questions and answers on the floor of the Senate you will read in that book when it comes out the first quarter of next year. So this is just a snippet of what is to be seen that we are going to be going through in this. So clip 2, please. That is the airplane in question. They will usually tag their flights as the smartest way to fly. It's written right boldly on the airplane, the smartest way to fly. And you want to wonder,
of Dana Air.
yes, and you want to wonder what's smart about knowing that your airplane has issues and you keep managing as if you are riding a motorway on the bridges of Lagos. All right, clip 3, please. Excuse me. Joe, that is a crash scene. That very sad and unfortunate day that we lost a lot of lovely people.
Very close to Lagos.
That's right. That's the tail section of the of the aircraft that broke away and fell apart, while the main body ended up in a building, setting everywhere ablaze and burning, everything, incinerating everything within his, within the vicinity. And of course, that's a Julius Berger vehicle that he's helping to clear the debris.
I'm sure you have the AIB report of this crash.
Yes, I do. Well, it's simply confirmed everything that that I already said to the Senate. I was invited to the floor of the Senate, and I gave a report of what I knew. I cross-examined the officials of Dana Air. They practically admitted everything that I said. And so let's move to clip 4 and get started very quickly. Clip 4, please. Here we go, Joe. Dana Air aborted on 14th. I'm starting from 2 years. When the bubble began to swell.
That's to defend.
Yes, when the bubble began to swell. As far as I was concerned, the bubble was on a little before, leading to that official coming to thank me the next day. So that's why we talk about bubble. It's been swelling and swelling and swelling until it burst on the 3rd of July 2012. So here we go.
So it's a gradual process.
That's correct.
Perhaps the bubble was not even there.
The bubble was there.
Okay, it was just there, but unswollen.
No, it was swelling gradually, with some air pumped into it, by misbehavior and refusal to obey the rules of aviation, especially in maintenance culture and stuff like that. But let's go on. On the 14th of July 2010, I and 29 other Nigerians, including a serving minister, the then Minister of Foreign Affairs, Barrister Odion Ajimogobia, SAN, were scheduled to travel from Abuja to Lagos by Dana Air at 3 p.m. Excuse me. Having all checked in, we patiently waited to be on our way at the scheduled time. But at 3 p.m., an announcement came informing us that the flight had been delayed for 1 hour. At 4 p.m., a further 1 hour delay was announced. At 5 p.m., not a word came about the flight. At 6 p.m., not one word, and we were there seated like sitting ducks. At 7 p.m., the flight was called and we all trooped out with a sigh of relief. Oh, at last, we will make it to Lagos. Clip 5, please. Soon, we were all boarded. Immediately after the last passenger boarded, the door was closed.
As usual.
That's right. We patiently but anxiously waited for the engines to come on. 10 minutes on, neither the main engines nor the auxiliary power unit APU was available to power the air conditioners. The cabin soon became unbearably hot and suffocating. Passengers began to murmur. As the murmurings grew, I looked out through the window and saw technicians and engineers tinkering with the right engine while passengers were on board. That alarmed me. I quickly engaged one of the air hostesses, wondering aloud why they should be carrying out engine checks while passengers were on board. Joe, that is a taboo in aviation. You don't carry out maintenance, activities when passengers, because anything can happen. Aviation fuel could be ignited and explosion will take place.
So at what time should that be done?
It should be done before passengers are loaded on the aircraft. And if for any reason you discover a very serious technical issue after you've boarded, you must have passengers disembark.
Before you do anything?
Yes, before you get those jobs done. It's just like, anyway, let's move on. I stopped out. I looked out through the window and saw technicians and engineers tinkering with the right engine while passengers were on board. That alarmed me. Quickly, I engaged one of the air hostesses, wondering aloud why they should be carrying out engine checks while passengers were on board. I had hardly received a response from the air hostess than the captain shocked me by announcing that he couldn't start the engines from the cockpit. He further promised that alternative means of manual starting would be employed and we would be on our way to Lagos. Clip 6, please. I want to run through quickly to up to clip 8, and then we'll have time to hold further discussions before time chases us away from the studio. Terribly alarmed and disturbed at the reckless conduct of the officials of Dana Air, I made up my mind to protect my life and that of my fellow passengers. The implication of the pilot's announcement was that he technically lacked the ability to engage in a restarting procedure should any or all the engines of the aircraft flame out mid-air, which was exactly what happened that led to the crash eventually 2 years after. They lost the 2 engines and couldn't restart them. I immediately made up my mind that I was disembarking and that I was going to give my fellow passengers the opportunity of knowing the gravity of the risk we were up against that evening. I stood up, opened the overhead luggage compartment, pulled out my suitcase, stepped into the aisle and announced, "Ladies and gentlemen, this aircraft is not airworthy. If you fly tonight, you risk losing your lives. I am out of here." That was my announcement. Clip 7, please. As I walked down the aisle towards the door, equally alarmed passengers got up from their seats, picked up their bags and suitcases, and followed me to the door, which at this time was shut.
How many passengers were on board?
Well, I can only remember that when we stepped down and did the quick head count, I think I counted about 29 of us. There could be a little more of people who just walked off, and we couldn't capture them during the counting. But eventually, the Honorable Minister, but took the risk because he had some program. You see it in the last clip. Let's run through and then we can hold our discussions. As I walked down the aisle towards the door, equally alarmed passengers got up from their seats, picked up their bags and suitcases, and followed me to the door, which at this time was shut. One of the air hostesses got on radio screaming that we should return to our seats as the pilot was now set to taxi off, perhaps with one engine which at this time has started rolling. They had done the manual, jumping with external APU and got one of the engines rolling at the time when this thing was now going on. And then the air hostess was screaming, "Go and take your seat, we're about to leave."
So you're saying the plane left Abuja airport with one engine working?
I wouldn't know what happened later on because I have only one more clip to run, and then we asking your questions.
But your time is good, you handle it as
no, let me just end up because I want us to keep the program. This program will take us about 10 weeks to finish. It's a long story. So please, I don't want us to leave anything behind today. I have one more clip to go, and then we'll hold our discussions. That we should return to our seats as the pilot was now set to taxi off, and perhaps with one engine, which at this time has started rolling. We all in unison told the air hostess she and her airline had no right under the law to carry us against our will. Knowing that to be a fact, the pilot called for the staircase to be returned so we could disembark. On the ground, Honorable Minister Odion Ajimogobia's SAN walked up to me and said, "Gentlemen, why did you disrupt the flight this way? I am on my way to Washington, USA to deliver a paper on behalf of federal government. By this disruption, I am unlikely to catch my flight leaving Lagos for Washington at 10 p.m. That was the then Honorable Minister for Foreign Affairs, Barrister Odion Ajimogobia, SAN, talking to me after we had disembarked and we were all on the ground. He walked up to me and engaged me. It was a gentlemanly engagement. He wasn't nasty at all. He wasn't. He was civil about.
So beside him, how many other passengers engaged?
That's right. Clip 8 is the final clip, and we'll hold all our discussions for the next 15 minutes, and we'll get out of here. Now, clip 8, please. That's correct. I promptly and respectfully replied, "Honorable Mr. Sir, this plane can kill you tonight. And if you die tonight, that meeting in Washington will go on without you." That's what I told him. He's a living man. Anybody that knows him can call him and ask him. All you will receive will be a 1-minute silence. And guess what? The waiting time will only be for 10 to 15 seconds. And somebody will say, "May his soul and souls of the departed rest in perfect peace." And people will echo, "Amen." And that will be the end of the man that saw death coming and went in. Touched by my reply, the Honorable Minister shook his head, sighed, and walked away. Shortly after, 2 men walked up to me and asked if I was Godike, the man who caused the disruption of the flight. I answered in the affirmative, and they asked me and my fellow passengers who disembarked to follow them. They turned out to be Secret Service men who took us into custody until the flight, which I later understood took the Honorable Minister and a few passengers willing to take the risk until that plane arrived Lagos. By 12 a.m., the 22 passengers who were detained along with me were allowed to go home. Dana Air, in complete disregard for international aviation law, flew to Lagos with our luggage. It's a taboo. You don't ever do it. If anybody disembarks, you must get out the person's luggage from the luggage compartment. It's a must internationally. ICAO should never hear that somebody disembarked and an airline willfully went along with that individual's baggage. But that's what Dana Air did on that day. They went with our baggage to Lagos. I have in my records the names, telephone numbers, and photographs of all the passengers detained with me. True, Joe, I have their numbers, I have their photographs, and I have their names, all of them. as we get into discussion, I'll tell you more about how I got about getting all those, data in detention. More graphic details you will find in my book titled exactly as this series, that is, And the Bubble Burst, the complete story, due to be released in the first quarter of next year.
Okay, now the bubble kept on taking in air until it got beyond its capacity and then it exploded.
That's right.
Now, before it exploded, there are two key things that you said. One, you do not start the engine while passengers have already boarded.
No, that's not what I said. You start the engine. You can start the engines when the passengers are boarded. What I said is that you don't engage in maintenance work.
Okay, you don't engage in maintenance or technical work when passengers are already boarded.
You don't do that.
You don't do that. And secondly, when a passenger disembarks, you just have to give him his luggage.
That's correct.
Now, within these two key things that you mentioned, the security agencies in the airport, particularly the NCAA, were they aware?
Joe, they are always aware. Always. I'll share quickly. I just came back from Lagos on Saturday, and I'm going to share very quickly to let you know how these things work. Because that airline apologized profusely, and one of their managers sat with me in the NCA office profusely promising that that will never happen again. And she spent 1 hour convincing me to allow this to be first offender issue, and that if I ever experience it again, then I could take it off. I announced my forgiveness. That's why I won't mention the name of the airline. Otherwise, I would have told you graphically the name of the airline and what they did. But I'm going to tell you what they did, but I will save the name. We had a 3 o'clock flight. That was just two days ago on Saturday.
In Lagos?
Yes.
Lagos to Abuja.
Lagos to Abuja. And on arrival, the people at the counter simply say, "Oh, sorry, we are loading Kaduna, for this time. Abuja had been moved to 4 p.m." And I took a look at my phone to see if I received any email or text message, because in filling my form online when I booked the flight, I put my email and I put my telephone, so they had all those alternate ways of reaching me And if you see how I hurried to run to the airport to beat Saturday morning go slow on Maryland, you will be sorry for me. Only to get there at about slightly past midday to hear that my flight had been moved to 4 p.m. without notice to me. That is against the passenger's bill of rights.
Oh, so yes. That, because I know that
before I arrived,
that is a right,
But before I arrived, a passenger was already screaming blue murder. How on earth would you tell me this? That I'll have to wait till 4 p.m. to fly, when my flight was supposed to be for 2 p.m. and I'm here early enough to check in as required by law, by the rules. I said, okay, okay, the usual way, okay, sorry sir, it's due to operational reasons. We are going first to Kaduna before we now do Abuja. So, okay. I told the gentleman, don't waste your energy, come with me. Let's go to NCA office. And went out there. I immediately, documented it, reported to the officials I met in the NCA office that this is what's going on with this airline. They picked up the phone, called up the airport manager, who was a lady, and she quickly ran up to that office. And I asked her to explain. Initially, she tried to say, they might have sent this text message, but because of network. I say, you're not giving excuses with network. Now we're going to try this in court. I'm going to make sure that this matter. That was when she now broke down and confessed and said, "Sir, please, I'm sorry. Somebody didn't do his or her job. And I am profusely sorry." She sat there for 1 hour as the papers were being processed. And I give kudos to the NCA officials. Ladies.
In Lagos.
They were all ladies, yes, in Lagos. She didn't waste 1 second. I can't forget that lady. She went on the system immediately, documenting it and getting ready for action. And I gave her my thumbs up. This is the way we can fix Nigeria. There's no other way. And for that airport manager to sit in there for the next 1 hour trying to convince me to drop the charges, it shows that she's going to go to that department that failed to send out these messages
And also lash them.
yes, and make sure it never happens again, and she doesn't get that kind of embarrassment. She was actually supposed to be dispatching the flight that was about to leave to Kaduna. She had to call her assistant to sit in for her while she made sure that things didn't spiral out of control. And I give these to ladies. They appear to be better managers. The woman that came on behalf of the airline happened to be a lady.
Okay. Now,
yes.
I'm talking about the question that I asked earlier.
Yes.
Whether or not NCAA was aware of the two, unlawful issues that happened with the Dana airline.
Of course.
July 20.
That is 14th of July 2010. Joe, trust me, all my life I've ever loved aviation. My father stopped me from being a pilot, and I've never gotten over that. All right? So, I know the rules. I know what should be done at any point in time. And let me share what happened to you that day when we were detained. We were detained by the SSS officials who were at the airport, and who heard that one Godike had disrupted the flight because he noticed a technical issue that was rare, that should ground the aircraft, that should be fixed, because that equipment was to be bought for $2.5 million US. That's the cost of
the engine
and not the engine, the APU, the auxiliary power unit. All right. It's sold for $2,500,000 US.
as of 2010.
Yes, it shouldn't be much more now. I mean, the kind of inflation we're experiencing here is not the same happening with the dollar out there. And so rather than do everything possible to keep this that airplane safe, they kept using manual means of externally rolling the turbines. And the implication of that, Joe, is that if for any reason any of the engines flare out mid-air, there is no chance.
Now, as we round up part 1 of the bubble burst, part 2 will be on your way next week. But before we go, what is your recommendation in the part 1 of the bubble burst that you've just rolled out, especially on the 2 unlawful things that happened?
Because I experienced NCAA last Saturday, I must tell you, they have very stained, serious-minded ladies manning those.
The one you experienced is the department in Lagos.
That's correct.
We have others, in other airports.
What I expect my fellow Nigerians to do, Joe, and I keep saying this, we are our own problems. Nigerians are always too much in a hurry and too sentimental and emotional and religious, to the point of, I don't want to use the word that is coming to my mind. I'll keep that word, but it beats me to imagine that we expect a good nation to fall from the skies. A good nation will never fall from the skies. We've got to fix our nation, and those beautiful nations that we always go to holiday and always visit and admire did not fall from the skies. They were handmade by the nationals. Hard work. If you see some evil going on where you have some little influence, and make it a duty that is worth every minute of your time, that is worth your money to stop the nonsense.
I must thank you for coming on the show this morning.
Right.
This is where we'll wrap up. Of course, that is the end of the Bubble Boss Part 1, Part 2. Be on your way, same time, next week, Monday. It has been with your number one Nigerian aviation freak, Mr. Godwin Ike. Once again, thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Break one, we'll come back. The program this morning on ITV continues.
Wake up in the morning, the first thing in the mind is knowing what is going on around you.